Skull Buffs, baby.
The Colorado Buffaloes return home after a handed beating at the hands of the Utah Utes, and the program is looking lost. Hope is looking lost for this program, this coaching staff. Direction is unclear, but back at Folsom with the home faithful behind them, and they are taking on a team that last season they did the same exact thing to, the Arizona Wildcats. So, I'm Liam Howard alongside Leo Rivera, Mia Driscoll, Oliver Hayes, and we are here on SBS Football Live. Thank you all for joining us. We are going to get straight to the nitty-gritty, the terrible topic that nobody wants to talk about, the smacking at the hands of Utah. Not much positive to say, so let's get straight into the negative. Mia, I'll start with you. What are you most disappointed with in the plethora of disappointments from this last game?
Yeah, there's a lot to pick from. I think for me it was the defense. I think they were trending in a positive direction, and they made a true freshman quarterback to look like a star. I mean, we just can't compete with that in a Big 12 in a competitive conference. I mean, the largest margin of victory in the Rumble in the Rockies since 1903. That's not the Deion Sanders era that he promised that we have come to expect. And I think that it starts with the defense across the board. It's a lack of responsibility and it's a lack of discipline. That's where I was most disappointed.
And that the Coach Prime era that you mentioned is something that was expected to come with that discipline and a lot of creativity, a lot of new things to see with this team. Oliver, I know that you were not enjoying the creativity of this team. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I didn't like the creativity, especially because after each of these losses, we have heard from Deion Sanders and the coaches during the week that they need to put the players in better positions to succeed. I don't see that happening during the game, and I don't know when that is potentially going to happen. I don't know if it has to be a coaching switch. I don't know if it has to be a personnel switch with putting players into the system that they want to currently run. But at the moment, especially when you see 43 unanswered points in the first half, there is something that has to be done. There's an adjustment that has to be made, and nothing was done. It just continued to happen, and sometimes that's just how games unfold. It's the nature of sports, but personally, that was the thing that disheartened me the most, especially when we see this type of thing week after week after week, especially with the rushing defense.
Yeah, and that coaching staff has been mentioned by Coach Prime as something that it starts at the top with this team. And Leo, I know that you had a couple coaches in specific that you were really disappointed with this week.
Yeah, you mentioned that run defense, Oliver Hayes. 422 yards is unacceptable. That's 4 football fields, people. I mean, if you talk about Colorado's worst game today was 320 yards against Georgia Tech, and they put 100 more on their head. Not only that, on the back of a true freshman quarterback. And that falls on the coaches of Warren Sapp and Domata Peko. You have an NFL Hall of Famer who was one of the greatest, 3 techs to play one, do whatever you needed of all time. And you have Domata Peko, who spent 15 years in this league as a premier run stuffer. That's what he was known for, and his leadership ability. And you have no leadership from this defensive line, no accountability, and no one was able to consistently make plays. And that's what's been the most frustrating, considering all this knowledge in that area.
And I'm going to keep it on the same theme with the coaching staff. I'm going to look at the coordinators. Both coordinators absolutely disappointed me this week when watching this game. Primarily Pat Shurmur. You mentioned the lack of creativity in that offense. I honestly think it's an understatement. We've seen it time and time again when watching these games, and Colorado has failed to capitalize on any opportunities, largely because of what these two are providing to this team week in and week out. Coach Prime not calling plays. If you're him, you can push that responsibility off onto your coordinators, but at a certain point, it does become your responsibility if you're still paying the men. I was really, really surprised to see those coordinators still employed by the morning. I was looking forward to rolling out of bed and looking at my phone and saying, Pat Shurmur's gone. It's a new day for Colorado football. But no, they are still receiving paychecks, and this team is still struggling. And I think that is going to be a consistent theme as these guys have just made them look foolish. This was the key example of that. If there is anything positive to take away from this game, Mia, what would you say that is?
My positive is that I don't see how it gets worse than that. You talk about the rushing yards, you give up 7 sacks. You're doing it to a team that it wasn't even really on our radar as one that we had to prepare for as we did to Iowa State. I can see across the board how as we go forward, the positivity is there because we are taking on teams like Arizona on a 2-game losing streak. We're going against West Virginia, 5-game losing streak. I mean, the positivity goes a little bit farther than I think we can see right immediately after that game as we're looking through the press conference. But I think the positivity can be there if we can think about a bowl at all at this point.
And getting late into the season, obviously the bowl question comes to mind. This team really trying to cling on to that. But getting into this time of year, there's other sports that are up and going. Oliver, you excited about something else?
I'm excited about men's basketball season. Let me tell you, of course, women's basketball, you need to be paying attention to them. You can talk to Harrison Simeon about that. But the men's basketball team, I got my time to speak, and I will. They have done their recruiting. They may not have the 5 stars, but they have a solid 3-star in Isaiah Johnson, and he has led the way with scoring in Australia this offseason and this preseason in scrimmages. Josiah Sanders, a 4-star. He's coming in bringing a combo wing presence at the point guard position, but he could play all the way down to the 3 or the 4. You look at Ian Inman and Jalen Holland; those are guys who can come in and make an immediate presence as 3 and D guys. But you have to look at the returners too: Elijah Malone, Sebastian Ranchik, Bangot Dak, Felix Caceres, redshirt freshman Andrew Crawford. Those guys are all solid, bringing a leadership presence. And you look at Sebastian Ranchik as a guy who could potentially be a star, which is something the Buffs football team has not had. So much to look out for when the Buffs tip it off against Montana State on November 3rd.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just about anything for Buffs fans to not have to focus on football right now. I'm going to try and maybe transition it back to football. Leo, you got anything on that end?
You know, it's hard when your football team plays poor and you have to open up spaces for the pumpkin pushers to become available on screen. But I think one of the positives is that Julian Lewis still hasn't played or made an appearance. He's going to be saving his eligibility, Liam, so that's fantastic for next season. I mean, I think at this point it's getting pretty dang close that if you don't eke out a win soon, your bowl hopes are gone. You got to be looking forward to the future, and I guess that's a positive.
And I think that if you're trying to get a real, true positive from this game, you're grasping at straws. There's nothing truly positive to take away from this. All you can really do is flush it, try and forget that it happened, and move on. There's so much negative. There's not enough time in a week to learn from all of it. There's nothing that this football team can do truly to take away something positive. But at the end of the day, is there someone that this falls on primarily? Is there one coach, one player whose responsibility of a loss is this game?
For me, it goes back to the coaching staff, and we even saw in Coach Prime's press conference today that you can see the tension and the disagreement within the coaching staff. You know, you can see the frustration on the sideline. It just doesn't seem like from the top down that everyone's on the same page. That's a lack of leadership, and that's a lack of sense of unity that the team needs, especially at this point in the season. And that starts with those leaders. You know, today in the press conference as well, Coach Prime said he's not just coaching players, he's coaching coaches. And it seems right now that they aren't even looking up to him as a leader and that they aren't following in his footsteps the way that he would like them to. And that is where this program is just completely at a loss. I don't think that the players can really take it out of their hands much more than that because they aren't receiving the instruction to get them to a point of success.
And they have said repeatedly that it starts with the coaching. It starts with the coaching. It needs to be their responsibility. They need to step up and do their jobs. But when you see the same thing over and over again, as a fan, you start to question, is anything actually being done? Do they mean that? Oliver, are you looking at the coaches as well?
Yeah, I feel like I just have to look at Coach Prime. Part of it isn't his fault. He's dealt with the health issues that haven't kept him around his team, which has been hard in a transition year when he's been used to coaching his sons and players alike who have been from the high school level all the way through college and getting these guys to the NFL. You know, looking at Shador, Shiloh, Travis Hunter, Cameron Silman, Craig, all guys like that. When he has to make a transition to guys that he has not coached as thorough and as long as he has with those guys, he has to be around the team to get to know these players. But like he said, he did not have that opportunity over the offseason. And with continuing health issues, no matter what it is, we're all hoping that, you know, from a human standpoint, that he's doing okay. But it is also hard for him to be able to coach coaches, to coach players, to make sure that everyone is on the same page when he is not able to be around the program and he is trying to make such a hard transition.
And balancing as well, I think, for analyzing this team, you have to balance the personality of Coach Prime, the energy he brings, the money that floods into the program, and then the actual results on the field, like you're mentioning. Leo, I think that is certainly a interesting direction for this program to be going in. Do you think that falls on him as well?
Yeah, real quickly, I will just say, shout out the men's basketball team. I think you guys definitely should just go. I would support them, especially, Oliver's coverage, of course. Get that out the way.
Yes,
Obviously,
sir.
not
Shout
hating
out
on them.
Oliver Hayes.
Because you also will hopefully see me talking about them this year. But when you talk about this loss in particular, you got to remember that football is a team sport and that there are 11 guys on the field at a given time. And that loss falls on everyone. Special teams was atrocious. Offense was atrocious. Defense was atrocious. Coaching, atrocious. The journalism, okay, I'm just joking. But, when you look at all those aspects, it really was a top-down debacle. Straight off the bye week, it seemed like no one had their head on right. Utah was not taking like a business trip. I mean, Colorado's yet to get a road win this year, so can you argue that they have taken any of this trip seriously? But that was kind of my big takeaway from the game.
And I think that, as you mentioned, the team sport aspect also, blends in with what Oliver was saying with the lack of Coach Prime's ability to be here before this season started and really mesh this team together as a whole cohesive unit, especially with all the new faces around. And so that is difficult for him, but at the same time, I think you dwindle this down, it does fall into his hands as his responsibility. You look at, obviously he's not calling plays, but he is still employing the guys. I mentioned this briefly earlier. He's employing the guys who are calling plays. And not only is he employing them, he stepped up there multiple times and defended these guys. He's defended these coaches, saying, I love our coaches. I love our assistant coaches. And he's decided not to make change. So as much as you can say that he's not the one calling the plays, the play on the field is not his fault, it does become his fault if he's not willing to step up and make a drastic change like that. So I think that that's something that they are severely going to need to look at when moving forward. And moving forward, we're going to look at the game this week. Arizona will be coming to play the Buffaloes on Saturday. We're going to start off with the defense. The defense was, as you mentioned, atrocious for Colorado last week. So now they come and play a high-powered offense in Arizona. Mia, what do they have to change this week in practice in preparation for that game?
I think you bringing up practice is an interesting point because we've seen the team across the board say that they had one of the best weeks of practice. So does it really start in practice? I don't know. But I think for the defense, it has to be working as a unit. If you are collectively, or if you are beating your guy one-on-one, that does not mean that your defense is collectively doing its job. If you are not playing for the guy next to you, I believe that the defense needs to get it together to where they can think as one. And I just haven't seen that at all. You're missing blocking assignments, and you're not containing the edge at all. I mean, it's just kind of frustrating because it does seem that people are playing for their own highlights, for their own, resume. And I think that that's not how a defense can put themselves together in a position to make stops.
Yeah, and when it becomes put up or shut up against these tough run games that a lot of teams in the Big 12 present, that's something that this team has not been well prepared for whatsoever. Oliver, do you think that is something that comes down to just an individual player on the defense level, or is it a unit as a whole?
I mean, it has to be a unit as a whole. You have to look for a leader, and I felt like in past years, especially with Travis Hunter, you had a star, a guy who could impact the game so much. Part of that was just talent, but his personality showed in the play of other guys. But you looked at Cameron Selman Craig, who I mentioned earlier, and he was another leader. This defense has failed to find a reliable leader week in and week out. And I think they need to dig in and focus at least on one asset, which should be the run. In the Coach Prime era, the run has not been contained. And in the last year, when CU had success, the games that they lost came down to not being able to contain the running backs. If they want to show some dignity after a loss like they had last week, they need to be able to lock in, put hands on a ball carrier, and stop the run, especially because when Arizona is able to move the ball on the ground, is able to open up the pass, and they've only rushed under 100 yards once this season. So it'll be a tough task for the Buffs, but I think that's the one thing you have to hone in on when there's so many issues across this defense, from the coaching staff to the players to the rushing game to the passing game.
And Colorado was ranking consistently at the bottom of the country in terms of how many yards per game they were allowing on the ground in those seasons. That's become the case again this season. It was just showing on our graphic there. Colorado now third most yards per game allowed on the ground in the country, and the most among all Power 4 teams. That is looking eerily similar to the years of old. What do you think is the key to changing that this week?
Yeah, I think quite frankly, you got to shut up, you got to find some toughness, and you got to thump. Defense is a mentality, first and foremost, Liam Howard. It ain't complicated, right? See ball, hit ball. You got to be flying around to that football, and you can't be afraid. Oliver talked about that lack of toughness, that lack of defensive leadership. The only person on this defense who's been thumping is Tafik Bayard, week in and week out. But the problem is he's not providing the vocal presence and the vocal leadership that you also need from a defensive captain, of someone like, to call upon a great safety like an Ed Reed, right? Someone who's going to be vocal and then come out and back up the play as well. That's kind of the presence that Colorado's been lacking in this locker room. But someone's got to find it, whether it's the interior D linemen or the linebackers. There needs to be louder plays. You need to be able to hear this Colorado defense make tackles, not get ran over and dragged down for 2 or 3 extra yards just to get them down.
And like you mentioned, toughness, thump, those are mental aspects as much as they are physical. One other key mental aspect to this defense needs to be their discipline. It is just over the top, overcommitting, missing blocks, missing blocking assignments, missing tackles, just basic mental mistakes that separate good teams from bad teams. That's something that you see with the best defenses in the Big 12 and in the country. They are disciplined. That's the first word their coaches will talk about them with. That's the first word scouts will talk about them with. Colorado, that word does not get tossed around unless it is in a lacking standpoint. And so Colorado desperately needs to step up in that discipline category. They had a bye week to prepare to be disciplined against Utah. I mentioned it on last week's Football Live. Utah brings an incredibly disciplined unit on that defense. Colorado has to try and match that. They absolutely did not. They had the extra time to prepare that Utah did not have, and they still were completely unprepared and on their heels the entire game. So I mentioned the Arizona offense and how talented that is. Their defense is also quite talented as well. Overall, a lot of great players on this team. Who is the number one player that the Buffs are going to have to look out for in this team?
For me, it's Noah Fafita. I mean, it's an experienced quarterback, play caller under center. He's someone that brings a lot of experience to the table, and that's something that the Buffs struggle with. You mentioned discipline, and that has to come from the start of the game all the way to the last second. And I just don't think that we've seen a complete game by the defense so far, and I think that Noah Fafita is going to see that, and he's going to attack that, whether it's with his arm or with his legs. He's only thrown 4 picks so far this year, and I think that that's going to come out in a big way against the Wildcats, because we can see if the Buffs don't come out just absolutely guns a-blazing, that's going to be a lack. And Noah Fafita is going to totally exploit that.
And a 3-year starter, that experience obviously so invaluable to this team. And he as a freshman, won the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year. Looked like the future of this program was really going to elevate it. They had a coaching change, and he had a bit of a down year. But then he's turned it back up, like you mentioned, only those 4 interceptions. Oliver, I know that you were wanting to look at the defensive side. Who are you looking at there?
Well, no pun intended, but take your pick. The Arizona Wildcats are second in the Big 12 in interceptions with 8 on the season, and there's a few guys who have 2 on the year. You can look at defensive backs Traydon Stukes and Javion Cole, but there's also a linebacker as well who has multiple interceptions. So I know that there's a lot of areas for the Buffs to have to fix when it comes into this game. And hopefully it comes into fruition being at home at Folsom Field. But looking at one of the unique standpoints, Kane Salter has not taken care of the ball in tough situations, and with the Buffs not having gotten blown out at home, at least memorably in the Coach Prime era, I think that this game will potentially come down to a big moment. And if it comes down to Salter's arm, we've seen what happens, and the Wildcats, they've made teams pay so far.
And these are guys who generate those bad plays. They generate those bad situations for quarterbacks. They're familiar with how to do that. There's another guy, though, that locks down the middle of that defense. Who are you looking at, Leo?
Yeah, continuing your theme, Oliver, Dalton Johnson, over there for that defensive backfield for Arizona has been leading the team in tackles, right? Or that secondary in tackles, and he's been pretty phenomenal out there flying around. He's got an interception on the year as well, Oliver. But like you mentioned, there are so many different names and faces that make this defense dangerous, right? Especially on that back end. And it creates a big disadvantage for Colorado in their passing attack, like you mentioned, Oliver, especially in an area where if teams are going to load the box and make you throw, you're going to have to win some of those scenarios. And Caden Salter cannot turn the football over. That is for sure, Liam Howard. Especially, we saw what happened against TCU. Given teams short field, it puts you in detrimental situations, and it's hard to make up.
And I'm going to switch it back to the offensive side. Although that defense is incredibly underrated and they are not getting the flowers that they deserve, they are going to bring a lot of issues to Caden Salter. But I want to look at the offense, primarily that run game after Utah did what they did to Colorado this weekend. I'm going to look at Ishmael Mahdi, a guy I've talked about a few times on the show already, Texas State transfer who has been incredibly efficient for Arizona this season. Sometimes they've struggled to give him the ball frequently, but when he's gotten it, he's done well. He averaged 7 yards per carry against the Houston Cougars, which was absolutely, even though that wasn't a game they were able to win, that put them in this game, or in that game, excuse me. And then his performance against Kansas State, 189 yards against a very good team in Kansas State that has really showed their true colors more recently. That, is not something that should be looked over at all. In total on the year, 5.8 yards per carry. That's something scary to look out for. And teams have been able to limit him if they scout him properly the week leading up to the game, if they look at him as a threat on that offense. But when he's left unchecked, like what Kansas State did, he was the RB2 at that time and then got the most carries in that game. He torched them.
Yeah.
That's something that Colorado cannot afford to do at all. Can't get caught looking back, can't get caught looking forward. Got to focus in on Ishmael Mahdi. But Oliver, you mentioned the home field advantage and how that's worked in the Coach Prime era. No real notable blowouts. They've kept close games there, even in the losses. How does Folsom Field affect this game, Mia?
I think that we've heard Coach Prime say, it's not necessarily the field, it's night, which we've seen for road games so far. But I do think that this weekend in particular, it's a holiday weekend. We've got a home crowd that's fired up, it's energized, and it's angry. We've seen the fan base just explode in response to this Utah game. I think that the players are going to come out with a lot to prove on their home field. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the crowd shows up. We could always see, kind of some jeering or some negativity from the crowd. And I think that sometimes that can have a positive impact on both the players and the coaching staff, whether it's being more aggressive or taking shots down the field earlier on. I think that being at Folsom at night, it's double the elevation of Arizona's stadium, which I think also, we can always say that has an effect. But I think that while we've seen kind of an inconsistency with road games and the close games at home so far this year, I think it is going to have an impact just in terms of the energy in the building.
And that energy has definitely been something that has contributed to all the close games that have taken place at Folsom. Oliver, do you think that energy is going to keep this one close or eventually put Colorado over despite how badly they just lost this past week?
I think it could, and it will really be dependent on if the Buffs can answer points. That's been a big thing this season, on if the Buffs can answer points, and it's been a big thing throughout the Coach Prime era, especially when you think back to that Stanford comeback 2 seasons ago. But when it comes to, the Buffs, Folsom Field creates energy. And a lot of times we've seen the Buffs get swallowed up by the away crowd. Whenever you think of Nebraska, you think of Eugene when they played the Ducks, you think of Utah last week. And having that home crowd energy will allow them to, answer those points if the Wildcats can get going. But on top of that, it is Halloween weekend. We've seen some spooky things happen. And at Folsom Field, at least in the Coach Prime era, field goals have not gone in for opposing kickers. So I think that could be another factor or another big moment that shows up in this week's game, especially if the Folsom Field crowd is rocking with their costumes on.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be a rowdy crowd this weekend with it being Halloween weekend, as you mentioned. Leo, do you think that is going to affect it, even though it is that nighttime game?
It could, but I think, the nighttime is the big thing you got to circle there, Liam. The track record tells you it's going to be not well for the Colorado Buffaloes this season. But I think playing at home, that might balance it out. But still, you look at the losses to Georgia Tech. That was at home. The loss against BYU, that was against home. And both of those were at night as well. And even though the crowd was energized all the way through the fourth quarter, it didn't really seem to matter. At the end of the day, you got to play football. You can't be worried about what's going on in the stands and what may be happening at the end of the second quarter or stuff like that, Liam Howard.
Yeah, I think that home field advantage is certainly it's something that this team has been talked about as they have issues with these attitude problems. They want to get all this attention on them. I think that Folsom Field fuels into that, and it can be a positive and a negative.
Yeah,
there has been the positive. That game against Iowa State, they looked like a completely different team than they did against Utah, and that was because of the crowd that was behind them. That was because of that crowd pushing up, ready to rush the field. They closed out that game. They got that third down, that huge throw from Caden Salter to Joseph Joseph Williams to seal the game. That was with the crowd behind them against that team. And I think that is something that is certainly going to play a factor in this game against Arizona, although that game against Utah, a major hit to their egos. So it will be interesting overall to see if that's going to have the same effect this week as it has in weeks past. We're going to expand out now. We're going to look at the Big 12 as a whole. This gives us an opportunity to check out what's going on around the Buffaloes, what's going on around Boulder, and who they're going to be facing in future weeks. Arizona State is the last home game that Colorado will have this season, and they have had one guy that has been the main spark plug for that offense, Sam Leavitt, who is out this week in a key game. How important is he to this team, and what type of team are they without him?
You know, you said it yourself, spark plug. I think that he is the identity of that team. You know, you saw in their loss to Houston, it was his lowest quarterback rating and completion percentage of the year, and that was their loss, you know. And I'm curious to see how they're going to respond to that, because I think that they lack that vision. They lack, who are we looking to? Who is setting the standard, and who is going to hold us accountable when we're not meeting that? I think it's going to be interesting to see how the coaching staff also instills their faith in the kinds of plays that they're calling, the kinds of shots that they're taking. And I really think that with him, they can be considered elite. And without him, I think it remains to be seen if they can even compete with anyone in the Big 12.
And certainly they've seen those struggles. With Jeff Sims in, although he's an experienced quarterback, he has not brought the same success to this team. As you see there on the graphic, they have lost both games where Sam Leavitt has missed substantial time due to his injury issues this season. He was very healthy last season, and that has been a struggle for him this year. Oliver, do you think that they are anywhere near an elite team without him?
I think it's hard to say, but after we saw what Jeff Sims did 2 years ago at Folsom Field, I mean, that was really rough. He had a really tough time throwing the ball. He's really talented with his legs. He's a great athlete, it seems, but at least throwing the ball and taking the snap for some reason at Folsom Field, he was struggling with that Nebraska squad 2 seasons ago. So seeing what he has to do will definitely be a surprise. Hopefully for a guy who has some experience, he can step up in that position. But when it comes to Sam Leavitt, who is a talented guy, he's tried to carry the Sun Devil squad who's dealt with injuries, especially to some of their stars. The O-line has not been fantastic at protecting him. He's been one of the most sacked quarterbacks, if not the most sacked quarterback in the Big 12. And so to not have a guy who can create both with his legs and his arm and is willing to make athletic plays and do so much as a leader is going to be so tough for the Sun Devils when it comes to this next week and weeks going forward.
And it's a team sport as much as, you know, everyone contributing the same amount, as much as it is the other guys around them protecting the stars. And like you mentioned, the offensive line has not done that for Sam Leavitt, and they have felt the effects massively. Do you think that he's a guy that is needed for this team to succeed?
I mean, no questions asked, but when you look at the play calling aspect as a whole, I think people don't realize how much it actually limits you losing that quarterback, right? It's not just the ability to recognize the plays and understand in the process, but as a play caller, successful play caller, I should say, you are designing your scheme around your players, around your quarterback and the talents that he has. You understand what Sam Leavitt is able to do, so therefore you're building your offense around him and how to design plays that are going to work for him. So when you have a completely different quarterback who the system isn't built for and he has to kind of come in and plug and play, you're limited on what plays you're actually able to call. And I know a lot of coaches like to say that next man up mentality and they should still be able to run the exact same thing when a new guy comes in, but that's just completely untrue when you talk about a player of Sam Leavitt's caliber and the things that he's able to provide to this team and the chemistry that he has with Kelly Dillingham.
Yeah, and I think even with, you know, Sims having that type of experience, as Sam Leavitt is a solid dual threat quarterback, that's not what they build the offense around. They don't build that around that part of his skill set. Sims is much more reliant on that part of his skill set. So as much as important as the veteran aspect is, that is not something that he has been able to step up and do for them. I think that they are a top 20 team in college football when Sam Leavitt is on the field. He makes them that type of team. When he's off the field, they're middle of the pack at best in the Big 12. They have proven time and time again they can't succeed without him. You look at that Utah game, 42-10. They got smacked. That's their only full game they've played this season with no Sam Leavitt whatsoever. And that is ultimately something that has been a detriment to this team, the biggest detriment to this team in their losses. Yeah. Focusing on star power as well, one of the biggest guys that has been a spark plug for another team in the Big 12, Tanner Koziel, the tight end out of Houston, been starting to climb up some draft boards. The Ball State transfer now making his way into the NFL scouting rooms. Mia, do you think this is the first tight end we see come off the board, even though the draft is a little far away?
I think that that's an interesting take. Like you say, the draft is pretty far away. I think that we've seen how dynamic he can be and how much of an impact he can have. You know, he's got great size. He's 6'7". He can really compete one-on-one. And I can see him going pretty high up. I think maybe top 3 tight ends. But I do think that there are other guys, you know, with that size, can he make those routes effective? Can he make plays when a play blows up? And I think that we can see that a little bit more with other people that I'm looking at coming off the board before him, as far as tight ends go. But I do think that he's trending upwards, and I like to see players like him. He's on the cusp right now. To see him in those big moments towards the end of the season, whether it's a bowl game or postseason play, that is where you can make the case for yourself.
I know that Kenyon Sadiq was a guy that you were looking at, the guy out of Oregon. This is a dude, I mean, the picture that we have on the graphic right here is him hurdling another grown human. That's the guy that you have going off the board ahead of him, and I think that that's a wise pick. I think that Kenyon Sadiq is a very athletic guy, like you mentioned, in comparison to Koziel, has maybe some of those aspects that Koziel is missing. Oliver, do you have a different take on him? Do you think he's going any higher?
I mean, not too much. You have to look at. I mean, I got to see him in person. It was really impressive, especially because Houston put the beat down on Colorado. But he had a lot to do with that. He made a lot of catches, and he's done so in a lot of games this season. And his height is really impressive. But the big thing that I think he may be lacking is his potential explosion and his potential speed. Not necessarily in the open field or running his routes. He seems to be fairly solid at that. He's a coordinated guy. But when you look at top NFL talent, you look at guys who are going off the board, NFL GMs and owners are looking at, is this guy going to be a star? Is he going to? It's not. They're not looking at is he going to be productive, but is he going to be a star? What's his potential in a lot of cases? And without the speed, the potential goes down. And so I think maybe in some teams' eyes, he may not be the best guy, but I mean he's been productive. He's been under the radar in the college game so far, and that has proven well for hard workers.
Yeah, and I think that, you mentioned a lot about potential, and there's, with so much season left and then so much time before the draft, potential is still what we're looking at this point. A lot yet to be seen. Leo, I know you're a guy who just does not approve of draft talk.
I always hate draft talk this early on in the season, but one thing I will say is Oliver Hayes was on Tanner Koziel, going into that Houston game heavily, and getting to see him in person, he definitely is a factor, right? He can stretch the field, that vertical presence, that long frame. He's definitely more of that receiver archetype type. But you guys never mentioned blocking, right? At the end of the day, you got to be able to put your hand in the dirt, especially in the National Football League. And I think that is one of the areas of the game he can improve on. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to this draft, it's going to depend on where coaches can see him fit, right? What kind of player are you wanting to go and get? And looking at last year's draft, you had Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren, two very good players, who are almost comparable, and it's almost kind of like a 1A and 1B. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's that kind of scenario later on this April.
And I think that, I like that you mentioned blocking, because there have been some successes, and even a guy who comes out of the MAC as well, Harold Fannin Jr.,
yes,
doing very well with Cleveland as basically a pure receiving tight end.
Yeah.
So there can be that sort of success, but I think that if you're looking at an overall well-rounded guy that scouts are going to look at and be like, this guy can block, this guy can be effective in the pass game. I want to talk about Eli Stowers out of Vandy, a converted quarterback who has added some mass, and he has proven that he can block for this team. He's been a huge part of their success. Doesn't have quite the receiving numbers that you see out of Koziel, but he is a guy that has stepped up. He's proven that he's capable in blocking as well. I think that overall, if you're an NFL scout looking at who you want to take off the board as a tight end early, this is a guy who's going to continue to climb up those boards. So this moves us on to the best segment of the day. Today, we get to talk about names. College football name teams have been widespread on the internet over the last couple of years. We've seen new ones every year and some really interesting names across college football. Of course, we keep it centered on the Big 12 here on this show. So we're going to look at the best names in the Big 12. Mia, I'll start with you. And folks, spoiler here, I think this is the best one that we have.
I mean, you said it, not me. I think you like to win the blowout games. You like to make a statement for yourself. But sometimes when you're in that moment, you just need a Hail Mary. All you can do is pray. You need Prayer Young Black Goat. He's one of 5 Native American players in Division I football from Navajo Nation. His brother is also Noble Young Black Goat. So it's a 2-for-1 right there. And I think this linebacker from Arizona State takes the cake.
Yeah.
Try to beat that.
I mean, that's certainly a very unique name. Oliver, do you got anything that can beat that?
Not really, but with this one, I kind of just went for the sound, the vibe of it. Also from Arizona State and fitting in hot Tempe, a defensive lineman, Blazing Lana Wong. It just sounds good. It sounds kind of like a TV character name potentially, maybe like a superhero. And the puns are endless if you're a play-by-play or color guy. I mean, he's flaming hot right now. This guy's on fire. He is lit right now. It just goes on and on and on. I think the versatility with that name is underrated, and even though it's maybe not as creative and as confident as Prairie Young Black Goat, it still stands out. And yeah, like I said, there's a versatility, and that's what I love.
Defensive lineman, Blazing, bringing the heat to the quarterback.
Goodness.
They're endless. Blazing Lana Wong, an incredible name. You are going to be the first guy to branch out from Arizona State. Arizona State's got some incredible names, but I know you want to look up to the Little Apple.
Yeah, we'll go a little bit up to Manhattan, where we have the Kansas State Wildcats and their guy, Cody Stufflebean, all right? Because what is a Stufflebean? That sounds like something I might go out and put on my plate at my grandma's house, you know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, maybe this Thanksgiving, someone's going to have some Stufflebean put in or something.
So.
Yeah, 100%. So that kind of just got me thinking about food. I mean, being the big guy at the table, y'all know I got to throw out some sauce a little bit. But yeah, that kind of just puts a smile on your face right there.
Do you think it's a bean or a lentil, a seed maybe? What would you categorize it?
I don't know. You're getting a little bit too specific here, Oliver. I just see food and I eat it. All right.
I think we see a defensive lineman named Cody Stufflebean, and he's actually been the most productive guy. He's played the most out of any of the guys that we've listed so far.
For sure.
I'm going to go with a guy who has played a grand total of 4 collegiate games at both Northern Arizona and now Arizona State. We're going right back to the Sun Devils. I'm going to talk about long snapper Tyler Wigglesworth. This guy, I mean, fire me up, Tyler Wigglesworth. Get out there and execute this long snap incredibly. This is a guy who somehow has only appeared in 4 games. If I am needing to execute a perfect long snap on a game-winning field goal, I'm sending out Wigglesworth. I don't care what the numbers say. I don't care that he's 5'10", I believe. The guy is ready. He's from right down the road in Glendale, Arizona, homegrown product. Went to Northern Arizona and then transferred up. He's staying local. Give me Tyler Wigglesworth, ladies and gentlemen. So, moving on now, we are going to go to our weekly pick'ems, talking about the games going on in the Big 12 this week. We're going to start off with West Virginia taking on Houston, who Houston made us look like fools last week. This desk.
Who's we?
Not okay. I'm talking about the people who were at the desk, including myself.
Making sure.
Yeah, just about. I think Aditya was the only person who picked Houston to win last week, and they won against Arizona State. They played a great game. Mia, who do you have taking this game between Houston and West Virginia?
I think Houston's fired up right now. I mean, I think that, again, the Coach Prime effect went to Houston, and it got totally shut down. And I think that they're just gearing up to do that again. I mean, they're in a great position right now in the Big 12, and I think that West Virginia just really can't compete with that at the moment. You know, a 5-game losing streak, as I said earlier, and I think that they'll just keep building. I mean, I don't see it being closer than a 2-3 score game. I'm looking for Houston to, again, rack up some points. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be quite as much as the blowout they did before, but I think I've got Houston in this one.
And West Virginia's been a team that we've doubted on the desk all season, and they've earned it. Houston has gotten a lot of doubt from us on this desk as well. They have not. They have continually gone out and proved us wrong. Oliver, are you switching up and taking Houston this week?
Yeah, no, I got to take Houston. I mean, I saw them play, like I mentioned earlier. I saw Tanner Kozio, but Connor Wigman, he has been very impressive. I believe I talked about him the first time I was on Football Live, and as I said, he is very impressive with his arm talent, but also with his legs as well. And I think the Cougars, as Mia was saying, they're just on fire right now. And West Virginia, they're not. They're on a huge losing skid. And it's tough because I went perfect in SBS Weekums one of these weeks. I picked West Virginia to upset Pitt, and that happened. But I don't put faith in the Mountaineers. Once again, I have to go with Houston.
And Houston, we talked about last week as well on the desk that they earned themselves some AP votes, and we're like, hey, that's nice for them. Now they got that number next to their name. They are looking legit. Do you got them winning?
I don't know why you guys have been continuing to disrespect Houston. Me and Oliver Hayes came back from that game, and I was astounded by the defense. I mean, I don't think we're talking enough about the way those boys hit, and they assert their will, and they fly around. It really is a fun brand of football. And when you're able to run the ball, and you're able to pass and do whatever you want at will, and have fun with your scheme, and you have a good tight end, it just makes it so much fun, Liam Howard. And this team can come at you in so many different ways. Shout out Coug TV over there in Houston, Oliver Hayes. But yeah, Cougars all the way.
Yeah, Houston, I'll center it on myself. I have doubted the heck out of them this year. I have not had much faith in Houston starting at the beginning of the year, but they have earned that respect from me. Defense is legit, like you said. They're going up against a team like West Virginia who cannot figure it out on offense. That's going to be a matchup nightmare. I'm going to take the Cougars with a victory this week. So next, that brings us to the UCF Knights taking on the Baylor Bears. Mia, who do you got winning this game?
To me, it comes down to a quarterback battle in this one. I don't think it's going to be, any sort. I don't think it's going to swing one way very heavily. But if you look at the quarterback battle, Baylor quarterback 23 touchdowns, UCF Taven Jackson 5 touchdowns. I just think the offensive efficiency is there for Baylor, and it's at Baylor in Waco. I think this one will be close, but Baylor will get it done at home.
What do you think, Oliver?
I think that UCF will potentially. Actually, no, I'm gonna go with Baylor, bro. I mean, I was looking at it. I was on the fence like Liam or Mia, excuse me, and I was looking at my paper, and it's tough. If it's on the fence and you're looking at home field advantage, I got to switch it up and pick Baylor. I'm sorry for messing up the graphic, but I just came to my senses just now. This was a last-second decision. I'm sorry.
I think that's our first ever time that we've had like an actual last-minute switch up on the graphic.
You got to have the confidence to do so. When you see that you did something wrong, you got to fix it.
Shout out to the confidence. Yep, confidence overlooked something that maybe the Colorado Buffaloes could take into account.
I'm just glad you didn't say that about me.
Well, let's move on to you, Leo. Who do you got taking this game?
Have some courage behind your conviction, Mr. Oliver Hayes. I'm riding with the UCF Knights to come in and get this upset, if you will, on the road. And that's because Nitro, may have told me a little inside information at Big 12 Media Day when we were, talking some basketball hoops there, Oliver Hayes. I don't know. I just have a feeling the Knights are going to come get it done.
I think that the one thing you look at in this for this team that is in this game in general that stands out, we're going to talk about Baylor's offense. That's the one thing about this game that's like you look at it as like that's a feature. I think Baylor's defense sucks. I think UCF's offense is equally bad. And so watching those two that go together is not going to be very fun TV. But then you look at Baylor's offense versus UCF's defense. UCF's sort of a middle-of-the-pack defense, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think Baylor's going to have success there behind Sawyer Robertson. Give me Baylor to take that game. Next up, we're going to look at Arizona State taking on Iowa State. This is a rematch of last year's Big 12 championship. Mia, who do you got winning this one?
I've got Iowa State here. I hate to pick them. I'm from Iowa, but I root for the Hawkeyes. But I know how daunting it can be to go to Jack Trice Stadium. And Iowa State is in front of their home crowd, in front of their fans. And I honestly am worried a little bit about the weather. I think Arizona State can go in there without Sam Levitt and see Rocco Becht be, a little bit shaken, a little bit jittery and cold, honestly. So I've got Iowa State, but I'm interested to see how Arizona can hold up.
Yeah, as we mentioned, Arizona State not having Sam Levitt this week, that's going to be a major loss for them. Oliver, who do you take?
Yeah, I have to echo that. That's obviously the big factor, but you mentioned it, Mia, and you being from Iowa, you have to know. Ames does not play around no matter what sport it comes to, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, no matter what it is. They are one of the loudest fan bases across the Big 12. I haven't personally been there, but I want to go because you can see the energy that is on TV. I know you don't like it as much, but I need to go everywhere across the Big 12 to see the energy and compare it to see for myself, but it stands out, and I think with Rocco Becht, who seems like a dog, he can lead the Cyclones to a win over the injured Sun Devils.
Yeah, those injury concerns certainly going to have some players stepping up. We're not used to those big moments. That crowd could certainly rattle them. Leo, you going? You saving the graphic to make us not look like fools?
No, actually, I was just about to say I'm pulling an Oliver Hayes. The more and more I hear you guys talk about
this is crazy.
The law.
You just called me out. You just called me out for this.
No, here's why.
What are we talking about?
Here's why. No, because Iowa State's supposed to win this game. All right, this is a different thing. Baylor was supposed to win that game. There's a whole different thing. I'm switching to ride with the underdog here because I like Kelly Dillingham that much. I don't know, for whatever reason, I think he's going to rally his guys. I think the injury to Sam Levitt is somehow going to light a flame, and this team's going to find a win on the road.
Wow.
Yeah,
So, folks watching at home, if you watch an Arizona State upset this weekend and you see this graphic, please do not say that it was our fault. For the record, Leo saved us. But I am not going to do that. I'm going to go with Iowa State. I'm going to keep us looking very confident in our pick. Iowa State, that they are hungry. After 2 straight losses, that's a hungry team, and they have the run game to get it done. If they need to go back to basics, they can do that. They got Carson Hansen back. Abu Sama's been rolling. Two-headed monster in that backfield. I think it's going to give Arizona State's defense a lot of problems and ultimately salt away the game for an Iowa State victory. But that moves us on to a very intriguing matchup that a few weeks ago would have looked like a blowout waiting to happen, but now, after a couple recent games, number 13 Texas Tech got to look out for unranked Kansas State. Who are you taking?
Yeah, like you said, I think it would have been a different story at the beginning of the season, but as of right now, this is my upset pick. I'm taking K-State. I think that this is a team that Texas Tech can overlook, and I think that we've seen teams like Iowa State in the Big 12 that can overlook those conference matchups where you can be just as competitive as you want. It's at K-State. And I've seen Texas Tech stumble already this season. I think that you can get a big head with that big ranking. And I think that K-State is ready to prove what they can actually bring to the table. And I think that this is an upset waiting to happen.
I think that it certainly gives that sort of vibe with how Kansas State's been playing. Oliver, do you think that they're going to pull it off?
I mean, I think there's potential there, but I have to ride with Texas Tech. They're one of the best teams in the Big 12, if not the best, and we haven't seen the wonkiness of last year's Big 12. There's a lot more confidence in some of the better teams in this conference, and so I just think with that, even though it is an away game and Kansas State has been playing some better ball, that Texas Tech can go in, prove their ranking, and come out with the W.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that Texas Tech is looking to do to prove their brand of football. Do you think that they're going to do that successfully?
Yeah, this is a team that's built from the trenches first and then works its way outside, which maybe the Colorado Buffaloes should take some notes. But Liam Howard, I think that's what's going to be able to help them on the road. You're going to be able to rely on that foundation that's gotten you to this point. Yeah, they've had the loss that they didn't want, but that's part of the process moving forward. You got to defend your ranking. I think they go out and get a road victory.
I think they're a tough team that have said that they put their backup quarterback in there, even though they know that they have Baron Morton available. With him coming back this week, I think that he's going to lead a great offense. They are going to be successful against Kansas State's defense. Give me Texas Tech. So now we move on to our second to last game. We got number 17 Cincinnati taking on number 24 Utah. Now the site of College Game Day this week after the smacking that Utah just put on the Buffaloes. Who do you got taking this game?
I'm excited for this one. I mean, we've seen what Utah can do. We've seen Brendan Sorsby and his firepower. But when I look at it, Cincinnati hasn't lost since August. They're on a 7-game win streak, and I just don't see them snapping that with College Game Day there this weekend. I mean, I think it's a big one. I think it's going to be a shootout. I'm thinking something like 42-35, but I've got Cincinnati in this one, and I think that they can advance to 6-0 in conference play. I think that that's a big thing when you can look at the competition between conference teams. Cincinnati has proven that they can compete and they can take home those victories.
Yeah, this is another late-night contest there in Salt Lake City. Who do you got taking this one, Oliver?
I'm going to go with Utah. I've stuck with the hometown advantage, the home crowd, with all the games so far. I mean, I guess I'm spoiling my pick with CU. But when it comes to the home crowd advantage, when you look at Utah, Folsom Field is not the only field that has the elevation across the Big 12. Utah definitely has it, and Leo can attest to that, having seen the beautiful view out there in Provo. And so you need to go and Provo or Salt Lake City?
Salt Lake City.
Okay, yeah, I got confused between BYU, excuse me. And there's Cougars and this and that. It's confusing. But either way, Utah, they're gritty. They've shown that they have some fight in them, that they can win some ball games. I think it'll be hard for Cincinnati to come in, even though they have some momentum. It would just be too hard on the road with the elevation.
Who you going with, Leo?
Yeah, I think this is a clear matchup of a really great offense versus a really great defense, right? So much to like from that Cincinnati attack and what they've been able to do through the air and that quarterback that you have mentioned. But at home, with the crowd, with that nasty, violent defense, I've seen this matchup too many times. I watched Super Bowl 48, unfortunately, Liam Howard. Give me the defense and give me Utah.
Yeah, I'm going to go switch it up with Cincinnati. I think Brendan Sorsby is going to be able to overcome that defense. He does it all at the quarterback position. I think he's going to counter that pass rush and ultimately lead Cincinnati to a victory. But that moves us to our feature game of the week. Arizona coming to Boulder to take on Colorado. Mia, who do you got?
I've got the Buffs in this one. I think that this is one that I had to think about a little bit, but I can see, some spooky things happening Halloween weekend. And I think that the home field advantage will be a factor in this game. Arizona's winless on the road, and they've allowed over 31 points in back-to-back games, which does favor Colorado in this one. If it's not a defensive battle, maybe Colorado can hang in there, and I think that this is exactly what the Buffs need if they are going to make a case that they are trying to turn this around, that they are trying to redeem themselves this season.
Oliver, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I know I've just echoed Mia a lot on this segment, but I kind of have to echo the same thing. I feel like home field advantage will give them an edge, especially with Arizona's struggles on the road. We've also seen the past few years with some Noah Fifita-led teams coming into Folsom. I know last year they didn't come to Folsom, but 2 years ago, that was a close game. It came down to some coach prime time management, but these games have been close. The game 2 years ago was close. The game last year, of course, was a blowout in Colorado's fashion. I think that with Noah Fifita at the helm, that this will be a time where the Buffs have seen some film on him, a lot of what Arizona can do, and I think that will give him an edge, especially with the home field advantage.
Yeah, and absolutely that home field advantage is going to play a factor. Leo, do you think it's enough to push the Buffs over?
Yeah, and I think it's a lot of outside noise, Liam. I think more than ever this week was the most critique put upon the players, and even on this show, I think resembled that, and deservingly so. We're not going to give them a pass for 53-7, Liam Howard, but coming back from that, you hit rock bottom. And what's the only place to go from rock bottom? That's right back on up, Liam Howard. You got to have a little bit of optimism. I see a scenario where maybe not Caden Salter, or maybe a different quarterback comes in, but someone on the Colorado Buffaloes is going to step up on that offense, and they're going to find a way to beat the Cats on Saturday night.
Yeah, I think that I'm happy you said deservingly so, because 53-7 is bad. Colorado's getting this outside noise because they looked pitiful. They are wounded. That's the worst that they have looked in years. That's what this program was trying to move away from with the hiring of Coach Prime, and now they can't stop a clock against Utah. How are they going to do that against a team like Arizona? They got to face this lethal offense with Noah Fifita, Ishmael Mahdi, like I mentioned. That's a tough matchup. But the home field advantage. They got this rowdy crowd on a Halloween weekend behind them. The team that was smacked in Salt Lake City, they left that in that locker room. They got on that plane, a different team, and they are going to come back and repeat exactly what happened last year. Give me the Buffs by 1,000,000 over Arizona this weekend back at Folsom. Leo, one quick thing before we end the show.
Most definitely. Before we wrap it up, just wanted to give a big happy birthday shout out to the man himself, Liam Howard, turning the big 20, and he's out here working till 10 at night for you guys, so give it up for him. Show some love.
I would love if the Buffalo showed me some love with a win this weekend. Thank you all for watching SBS Football Live. For Liam, Leo, Mia, and Oliver, thank you for joining us. You heard it here first.